to show you a couple things. So the first thing is water sources. You see a drain catchment area over here. We just had a heavy rain, so this thing is obviously designed to fill up with a lot of water and then go through the into the canal network. The way sewage systems normally operate is you have a flush sewage system and you have a storm sewage system, and they either go preferably all flush, which is everything that you pee and poop and put down the drain goes into one sanitary sewage system to the water treatment plant, and then all of the drain waste, that is rain, flood, overflow, all that other stuff, that generally goes through another septic system, and that is untreated sewage that they'll try to dump into canals and open waterways and stuff like that. If you look over here to the west, you'll see a bunch of trees that look out of place because they're natural. Those trees are all indigenous Palo Verde, Palo Brea, mesquite, and other things, and the reason why there's so many of them is because Skunk Creek is over there, and since Skunk Creek flows when it rains, that establishes a low groundwater and a consistent groundwater surface area to provide nutrients and water to all the trees. So that's essentially the closest that we're going to get to a riparian area. Riparian area is a natural place where water flows and trees grow, and it looks out of place in the natural surroundings around it, which we're in a desert in the middle of the city. So that's definitely out of place. If you're wondering where to get water and you don't see any other obvious sources of water, trying to identify natural terrain features that have a riparian attributes or indicators is probably a good place to look. And if you find such a place, you will probably find a lot of stagnant water in the ground. Now, if you look at this water and you look over here, you can see some floaties on it, and that means that water has been there longer than a week, or it had a lot of organic matter that was in between two rain cycles that were within a couple of weeks of each other, so the moisture from the moss that started to grow had not been killed by the sun before it rained again. Either way, there's a lot of natural microbial things in the water, and that's kind of good in one way, but it's kind of bad in the other way, because you don't see any natural plants growing out of it, you don't see any frogs, you don't see any tadpoles, you don't see anything that would indicate that any carbon-based life form other than the moss that's floating on it would want to live there. So this is not an ideal water source. Remember, it isn't about finding water, it's about finding water that can be made potable. And so that brings me to the thing behind me, which is this urban lake. A lot of parks have urban lakes, and a lot of golf courses have urban lakes. So when you're dealing with an urban lake, you have a couple of threats. So the first threat is, does it have algicide in it? Does it have any kind of dye in it? Does it have any kind of mosquito abatement chemicals in it? So all of those things will harm you, and all those things are very difficult to get out of your water when you filter it. That's not to say that if you had to, you could use this, because there's fish in it. There's people fishing in it. And if there's fish in it, that means the fish are going to be alive for more than a week or a month, which means that there's probably not enough of a chemical load in there to hurt you in the short term if you properly filter and treat the water. One of the things that you don't want to be fooled by, though, is wildlife. So you see ducks and birds and things that fly that are coming into the water source and they're coming out. You don't know how long they're here or where they came from or what happens to them after they leave. So don't rely on waterfowl alone to determine whether or not your water source is safe to drink, because they could be swimming right now into a pesticide or a chemical runoff overflow tank, and then, you know, they seem fine and then they die tomorrow, right? And you don't know that because you filled up water and left, and then you'll die the day after. So don't do that. So try not to pull water from stagnant water sources. If you have to pull water from stagnant water sources, you do need to look for signs of life, preferably weeds and stuff growing out of them, because it's not going to be there long enough to develop things like tadpoles. If you see mosquitoes floating in it, that's kind of good and bad. That means that there isn't a big enough chemical load to kill the mosquitoes, but the mosquitoes are in there, so that means it might have typhoid, diphtheria, all the other nasties you don't want. When you're dealing with an urban lake, to my right, and this one is designed for urban fishing. So that's great because you know fish live in there, but what else happens when you have an urban lake that's designed for people to fish in it? What else goes in there? Lead weights, power bait, all that other stuff. But really the biggest issue here is that there isn't a whole lot of flowing of the water itself. So over a period of time, all of the debris, all of the everything will develop a pretty thick layer of contamination in the bottom of the lake. And since they're being fed a lot of human food and a lot of, you know, catfish liver and chicken liver and all other kinds of stuff, now you have a lot of fat-based organic material that's decontaminating, and it's emulsifying the lead that's coming off of all the weights and everything that's going into that lake. So you can pull water out of here and you can filter it, but this would not be my first choice. So we're not going to pull water out of here. I just wanted to advise you on the different threat environment that you have and the different opportunity environment you have just sitting here. So I have stagnant water, I have a riparian area that we are going to get water from if we can find a water source, and then I have an urban lake that looks like it's safe to drink, but I would put it on the lower end of minimally acceptable and only in an emergency. Got a couple of things going on here. So that riparian area that I told you about, to my right you can see all of those lush trees and that kind of meadowy looking thing. But there's also some threats right in here that you may not see, and that is a homeless encampment. You can see the rope hanging down from that tree. If you're going to go to an area like this, you need to be aware that people do live down here, and you have to respect not only their privacy, but the fact that they're probably living there because they're on a sex offender list, or they're felons, or they have a serious drug habit. And if you have stuff that they want and it's just you and there's more than one of them, have situational awareness turned on. Obviously we're in the right place, as Tatey Spaghetti said, because it says flood area, stay out. That means there's water here, right? Now the sign below it tells us something else. You can use your bicycle to get water, but water weighs a little bit more than 8 pounds a gallon, and we need 5 gallons. We need about 40 or 50 pounds worth of water. If you put 40 or 50 pounds of water on your bike and you go down that 60% grade, you're gonna have to bring it back up again. So again, when you identify your water source, make sure it's safe for you to access, and make sure that it is able for you to egress from the area. So I parked my Jeep right over here, easy cheesy, and we have a split rail fence right here, which is easy to breach. Over there, what we have is a chain link fence, which we don't want to climb over, and it's also a lot steeper, which is why they put the chain link fence up there. You can see off in the yonder there that the grade on the other side of that chain link fence is like, you're going to break your leg and there's no way you're going to get back up there with 4 1-gallon things of water. Over here we have flood control lattice, that metal down there. You see that concrete mesh? That's to keep all the rocks and everything in place and provide a corrugated sink area for all the debris to go down, so it has a place to collect without washing away or eroding the side of the bank. It looks like a really good place to climb down, but it's not, because if you get your ankle caught in that lattice is not going to break before your ankle does, and it's so sharp it's going to twist it right off. So find a safer place to descent and climb out. So just always look for hazards, and depending on where you are, what state you live in, or what time of year it is, you have scorpions, you have snakes, you have tarantulas, you have brown recluses, and then you also have homeless people. So just watch out, try to find a clear area, and make sure that you realize when you're walking down with a bunch of light things, you're going to be walking up with a bunch of heavy things. So we're going to go get some water now. We're underneath, I don't know, the 101, 83rd Avenue, who knows? But what we are under is we're under a lot of organic matter that is going to come off of the top of this bridge that is above my head that you can see. And we also have, this is not a creek, this is an engineered flood channel. And an engineered flood channel essentially is a concrete mini canal, if you will, a really shallow mini canal that's designed to channel water, this normal runoff, like somebody drained their pool and then it came out of a storm drain and came in here, there was a light rain. Normal water is always going to be flowing through here, and that's that secondary line contaminated water, the storm drain water. They put these little concrete things in here to keep the canal itself from eroding down into a pit and becoming a safety hazard. So there'll always be a concrete floor. In this case, you can see that the concrete floor has sunk because the water is coming over the curb right here. You're like, well, Trooper, why would it sink underneath this bridge? Well, there's a couple of clues. The first clue is if you look at the pillars, you can see there's a lot of sand. So there's a lot of water velocity that comes through here, and that unearths the material around these pillars that are in the ground pretty deep, but that's a telltale sign of water velocity when it floods. And that's also a telltale sign of why this thing is sunk, because what happens, at least in Arizona, is we have compressed granite. So water will percolate into the ground, and since water doesn't compress, it displaces everything around it. Crushed granite will grow, and then it'll seep, and then it'll absorb water, and then it'll shrink. And over time, all of the microparticulates that are in the soil are going to get kind of washed away, and they're going to undermine any kind of layment like this concrete channel. So you have basically a sinking channel. Now this provides a unique problem for us and an opportunity as well. If you were a bum, you would not go and take a dump out in the middle of the field where somebody could see you. You would probably take a dump underneath this bridge where it's nice and shady. You have cover and concealment. There's a little bit of privacy. You have something to lean up against, like those concrete pillars over on either side of me. And so this is not an ideal place to collect water. The other thing is, since this is a low depression, you have all this erosion and then you have stagnation. So all of those white bubbles and all that crap that's on top of the water, we really don't want that. But it is providing a minor degree of biological filtration, because in bodies of water that are coming across flowing streams like this, you have a natural kind of biofilm that eats a lot of the other organic stuff that you don't want in your water that you were going to filter out anyway. It's the same concept that sand filters work on. So we're going to go downstream of this, and the reason I say downstream is because we know that if some bum shit in here, it probably got washed away hopefully a couple days ago. And if we go upstream, all we have is a whole bunch more bridges, and those bridges look like they're providing better cover and concealment opportunities for anybody that would want to hide down here in this canal network anyway. So we're just going to kind of go with a little bit of a risk appetite. We're going to avoid drawing water off the stagnant part of the depression here where we know it's eroded on the underlayment, and we're going to go down where the fast-moving water is. We're going to assure that we're finding things like tadpoles, polywogs, and other things, which I've already found in here. So we have organic matter, we have all the things that we need. We have flowing water, it's relatively clear, it has things growing in it, and it has things growing out of it, and we're going to try to get away from we have any kind of human sanitation issues, like somebody going to the bathroom down here, sleeping down here. We have a bridge right above us. That means that all the rain runoff is going to bring all that brake asbestos and black powderized rubber from tires and anything that drips off of an oil pan or a drivetrain. All that stuff is coming down here right now. So we're going to go downstream, we're going to get clear water, and then we're going to filter it. And again, we have our containers down here, and our containers have cheap caps. So I meant to say that in the last video, is always have a couple of extra caps on you, because you're probably going to lose one and then your stuff's going to slosh around. It's going to be a pain in the... So avoid overhead contamination from birds and pigeons and bats and cars and everything else. So you don't want to be underneath the bridge, especially because you have a lot of human activity here. Avoid stagnant water, but use stagnant water as a barometer or indicator of overall water safety. Look upstream and downstream to determine if it's worth it to try and find a better place. I'm not going to find a better place here, so I'm just going to go ahead and go downstream. It's been about 2 days since it rained, so I know after the 3 days that it did rain, all of that top contamination that was on the streets and everything else is already washed down. So this is just pretty much just normal runoff from today's rain that happened up north. So I'm going to go with that, and we're going to fill up these. We'll be back in a minute. All right, we found where we're going to get our water from. It's pretty shallow. It's only got a couple of inches, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get my big vinegar jugs out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look down at my feet, and I'm going to look for scorpions, heroin needles, glass, or any other types of things that would cut a hole in my foot, because I'm going to take my shoes off. That's the only way I'm going to get inside this water source. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off my pack, and I'm going to pull out my Sawyer bag. So I have some flat Sawyer bags that are designed to pick up water from low surface area like this. And it's going to be a pain because we got to fill up gallon jugs, and we're going to be doing it 32 ounces at a time. So, but we're going to be good. Oh, and always carry backup socks in your pack, which I happen to have, but I never leave home without them. But we're going to try some Zen balance here. Some Zen balance. So one of the things that was a responsibility for all troopers in my unit was that you had to be able to put your socks and your boots on without having to touch anything. And if you got too old to do that, it was time for you to retire. Now that was like 105 years ago. So, you know, I'm going to embarrass myself right now. But we're going to try it. And I'm on rocks, which makes us totally badass. Now watch me put it back on. That'll be the real fun. Oh, body cramp, like all the way up here. Yeah. So you definitely don't want to get your socks or your shoes or any of your equipment dirty, because you might have to walk 5 miles out of here. to deal with that. So anyway, we identified our water source, and the thing I really like about this water source is I have a really light moss. I have no trash. I have an even flow, and it's looking real good. So I'm going to go down here, and if I'm lucky, I'm going to be able to fill up my my jugs. And if not, then you know, it'll take longer than I thought it would. But here we go in the water. Woo! And it's slippery and warm. And warm is never really a good thing, but obviously it's hot here. So, oh, look at that. I'm gonna be able to fill up about halfway full. So we're gonna do two things at a time here. We're gonna multitask. And as I'm filling that up, I'm also gonna fill up my Sawyer thing. So, and again, I'm on the downstream side and I'm sweeping upstream. So what I'll do is I'll use this container that I'm filling up, the bigger one, to go ahead and pour in those other ones. And then I'll augment that with this one. So this is basically what's going to be happening off camera until those get full. Okay, so I'm almost filled up on these, and I wanted to show you guys a couple things. So when you have dissolved solids, particulates, floaties, heavy things that are in water, some stuff floats, some stuff sinks, right? We're pulling this out of kind of a mossy thoroughfare, and there is some of that top level foam that is in that little vortex pool that's kind of up there upstream. So at the top of my bottle, I see a little bit of bubbles flowing. Now we always fill our bottles all the way up to the top because we want to have the minimum amount of oxygen in them when we transport them. But as I'm filling this up, I'm going to go really slow, and then I'm going to over pour it so that all of the lightweight floaties wash out. I don't know if you saw those bubbles and all that nasty stuff, but it's not a precise science, but you just want to take the opportunity to get this water as clear as you can. And so that's what we've done here. We just got done collecting all of our water. Even though we had a Jeep and we had all the equipment and training and everything that we needed, it still took over 2 hours to get just a little over 8 gallons of water. So if you're on foot and a bicycle, you got longer to travel, or you got a more hostile terrain to navigate between home and your water source and back, it's going to take you longer, so start early. So now that we've collected our water, we're going to be in the transportation part of it. So we collected our water in our container, we brought it back. We have to have the ability to transport the water. That's going to jostle it around before we chlorinate it or filter it or strain it or do anything. We're going to bring it back home or back to camp or back to wherever the site is going to be. We're going to let that water sit for a little while. And when we're done, all those floaties will float to the top, and then I'll just squeeze the bottles, and then the floaties will come out the top. So that's why we want to fill them all the way up to the top, and then all the heavy stuff will go down to the bottom. We don't want to disturb that. And we're going to slowly pour 3 gallons or 2.5 gallons or 10 liters of water into our jug on the graduation sight lines that we made on our bucket. And that way we'll have a lot of sump or drain waste at the bottom. That's why we got 4 gallons, even though we only need 3. So we're gonna move out. Had a successful day. Didn't step on any glass. That's always good. And didn't encounter any unfriendlies. So that's always even better. Trooper out. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of our new videos, click like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Trooper out.